So I recently finished the toxic screen section of Viper's Gauntlet. If you saw the first video, that's where I demonstrated the mechanisms behind the snakebite launcher. And frankly, from like a design standpoint, you know, the real design challenge with this was not so much in the motion, but more so in the scale in which you're operating. There's a lot of small things that go into one of the wall sections that I wanted to. I wanted to go and give each of these their own sort of functionality, but these things are very small. So this is just a very, very basic sort of setup, though. It's got a coin battery and it's slid in from the bottom or the back side there. You've got a 5.0 LED, a 5.0 millimeter LED in there, and then you've got a little pillar that kind of sticks up to the top here that when you push on the bottom of that, you know, the pillar comes up and it lights up, and that light comes through somewhat on the edge around that pillar, but also it kind of leaks through the thin areas of the plastic. So I think what I'm going to do is when I'm going to paint all of these and sand them and everything, do all the finishing touches, I'm actually going to take them apart and put a piece of black tape on the top side of each of the LEDs so it doesn't go and shine through like that. Yeah, so that light kind of concentrates through that ring in the middle, right? So that's kind of the effect that we're achieving. And there's a little bit of underglow and all that, which I think is kind of cool as well. But yeah, the biggest design challenge was the scale at which everything was being designed at, not so much on the motion of different plates and panels and things like that. So the top priority for this design, though, is not in the lights or anything like that, but I wanted it so that you could have each of the scales have a deployed state and an undeployed state. And then there was a sort of secondary want to have them be removable, easily removable, and attachable as well. And I've achieved this with just more magnets. There's two here for each of the scales, and they're at slightly different angles. One is sort of the deployed angle, and when I slide it to the side, it engages with the other magnet, and that magnet's pull more aligns with a rested position. Now, when I was showing off my prototype, I had a short that I posted on this channel showing off a prototype, and I had assembled that by design. By design, the angles between the deployed and undeployed positions were 50 degrees. And that leads to issues because now the positive pole, one of the positive poles of the magnets is actually closer to its like pole. So there's like a positive pole and positive pole like 40 degrees from each other, whereas they would normally, right? And that causes some more repulsion because it's past 45 degrees. It causes more repulsion than attraction. So I got around that by instead rotating one of the magnets by 90 degrees. So now the 50 degrees and the 90 degrees kind of cancel out. It's now only a 40-degree angle that each of the scales are going at. Maybe I'm diving too much into the 3D modeling and people aren't able to track this. But basically, when it's in this position, it is still sort of aligning more with the attracted poles of each of the three magnets than not. There's no sort of strong repulsive forces happening between the fields of the three magnets in this case. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into. Maybe I'll create some quick short demonstrating the 3D model and kind of explaining this polarity stuff. some other time. So this is what it looked like attached to the arm. So I've got these Velcro straps. You can't see them on the black hoodie. I should have worn the yellow. But there's some Velcro patches on the inside that go and attach to these two straps. I've kind of debated back and forth whether I want, you know, in the future to like attach actual Velcro onto clothing, like Velcro like pads onto clothing, and attach it there, or make like a separate harness that, you know, kind of strap to the arm like this. I'm not sure yet. My first design, or the first prototype I designed for this, when I put it all together, it felt kind of bulky. It's very thick, and it felt more like Iron Man armor, you know, than some sort of high-tech futuristic, you know, gauntlet. Even now, it's still it doesn't really show the dimensionality with just half, but it still is quite thick and bulky, and I think we've hit like just the highest point of what is probably acceptable for you know, a cosplay like this. I also have, of course, the top section that I talked about in the previous video that also has Velcro on it for now. I think that's going to be just my method of attachment to, once again, either clothing directly or to some harness. And it engages fairly well. Now, I'm a 5'8" male, so my forearm is fairly small, I'd like to think. But I'm not sure if I make these files available for other people who have larger arms, if this would be a problem, because there's already a little bit of gappage there. And once again, I think I've hit like just the maximum point at which that gappage is unacceptable. Like right now, I've slid this pretty far forward on my arm. I can slide it further, I guess, and he kind of closes up that gap maybe a little bit more. If I were a little bit more petite, I don't know. Maybe the length would be the girth would be a problem, you know. So I'm kind of right at the cusp of, I think, what is acceptable, and frankly, I'm okay with that, because like everything is, you know, working, and it feels super badass. It looks super badass. I'm super proud of how this has all come out so far. You know, we got the two different mechanisms working sort of within the same structure, which is pretty cool, you know. Snake bite launcher, and then right, toxic screen. So it's all come together very well, but I do have some minor concerns about sort of the overall dimensions and everything like that. Like I said, this feels like just acceptably thick, and maybe some people will disagree. I'd like to hear people's thoughts. But I don't think I can make it any thinner without sacrificing any of the functionality or anything like that. So this is what everything looks like on the inside. So once again, you've got Velcro strip here, a Velcro strip right here, and then just everything is temporarily taped because, like I said before in the previous video, I am scared of the permanence of glue. But frankly, I think these pieces, because they're so big, I don't want to print them again. These are probably going to be the final pieces that I paint and prime and all that. Yeah, I've left a slot up here for the Viper Spit emitters that come out of the bottom of the wrist. I'm not quite sure how I want to approach that, if I want to go and add some mechanism in there. I kind of don't, if I were wearing like a cosplay at a con, I know I personally would not like having something just kind of flapping underneath my wrist. So I don't know if there's a way to make something extendable, but regardless, I've left a spot for something to interface with right there at the top. I'm gonna pull up the my first prototype. I kind of designed it in 3 different parts. Right, this is outside shell. I had some thoughts about maybe this piece, becomes interchangeable. Maybe if people don't really like the individuals, don't want to risk losing them, don't like the magnets, or whatever rationale they have, maybe there's some way of making a different component like this, that interfaces with the two big sections, right? And kind of just replaces that intersection in there. So who knows what creative things people will think up. But yeah, this is how I designed it. And even though I did make this replaceable, I only ever printed 2. The thinner one, I'm not the best modeler in Blender, but I took the starting model that I had that I got from, oh gosh, what's his name? I have it right here. Spearmaster. I think it's Spearmaster Cosplay is the full username. The link will be in the description. I took their model, and after printing it out and seeing just how bulky it felt, I tried scaling a lot of the outside down by 90 degrees, but my Blender modeling on something that didn't start with me, I think it's a little bit rough. So there's some areas where the polygons do show in the print, and that's just the resolution coming into play. So if I do sand them down, it won't be as much of an issue. It won't be visible, but right now the model is rough to say the least, and I'm not quite sure how deep I want to dive into cleaning up the vertices in this model. Overall, though, like this project has been a huge success. Obviously, this much more complex mechanism. This took me much longer. While I did go through 10 different designs for I have different like ratchets and different sort of hinge interfaces and things like that I was playing around with to get the scales to lock in and things like that. Just it's super simple to just use the magnets, and everything just works like a charm. And once I had that, then it just became the difficult part was how do I stuff an LED, an LED that is available to a lot of people that people could replicate. How can I stuff an LED into this space? And this was where I got to. Now there's definitely smaller LEDs out there. I do have some. I mentioned this was a 5.0 LED. I think there are like 1.8s and things like that out there in like different hobby kits. But once again, I don't know how available those are to other people. And frankly, once I was working at that scale, like the wires were getting super thin, and it became a little bit of a risk. Like I was worried I was gonna, break the wires when I was sanding down the insulation on them and everything like that. So I went with something very simple that doesn't need any length of wire or anything like that. So simple is sometimes good, and simple can be effective. And I think right where we're at, simple and effective. Complex, but effective. So all in all, I'm super proud of this. And yes, I am going to make it available to the masses at some point. It just requires a lot of cleanup at this stage. Like there's different versions for everything. Like I think even here, like we're looking at 2 different versions of like these plates right here, or something like that. There's still slots in the back where nickels used to be inserted. So we're still working through cleaning a lot of stuff up and refining it for the masses, but I will assure people that I will make the files available at some point, so you can go and purchase. and make your own Viper Gauntlet. Maybe you're of a different build than me, and you can go and see like, hey, you know, how does this fit on my arm versus, you know, his. My arm, like I said, I'm 5'8", I'm male, so my forearm is a little bit different. If someone has slimmer forearms, you know, maybe it works out differently. You know, it puzzle pieces together better, but it's longer. It looks longer on the arm, so maybe the proportions are a little different. I don't really know. I've kind of only designed it for myself at this point, and I think that's a little bit limiting in the accessibility to others sort of side of this. Velcro straps. These were just thrifted. I pulled them off of a pair of old, I think it was soccer cleats. No, not cleats. Shin guards. Soccer shin guards. I went to pull these off of them. So that's what I've used so far. But like I said, I'm not quite sure what my final idea or method of attachment will be. But right now, I think this is best. We've got the Velcro right in there, and that just works a treat. Lines things up on its own. Does everything, once again, simple but effective. So yeah, this has been my big project for the past 6 months, and I think it's come out real well. What's next for this specifically is going to be sanding, painting, 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 and then finishing up. Maybe add some primer, something to make it look metallic or something like that. I didn't go. I kind of, when I was working on the other, you know, props, I was kind of just doing the most basic of basic paint application. So I might dive a little bit deeper into presentation this time. Get some of the aesthetics and sort of engineering wrapped together. But yeah, so this is the bottom half, the second half, and I'm real proud of it. Real proud of it.